There are only two truths that I know in life. Number one, you can't avoid death. It doesn't matter how much money you make. It doesn't matter how fast you run or what you're capable of. Eventually, he will come find you. And number two, college football season's right around the corner when we're overreacting to preseason rankings. So let's all of us just continue to avoid death's doorstep and talk about the recent AP poll preseason top 25 rankings that just dropped. What's going on, SEC Unfiltered? It's Cole Thompson here. Make sure that you like the video, hit the ring notification down below, and of course, hit subscribe because we're talking college football every single day leading up to week 1 and well throughout the chaotic 2024 season. This is your new home for all SEC coverage this upcoming fall. Download the podcast version of the show. Leave a 5-star review if you love this type of content, a 1-star review if you're lying to yourself and hate this type of content. Make sure that you're also following us on the social channels, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, at SEC Unfiltered. Follow me at Mr. Cole Thompson. And to keep up with the #1 source for all things SEC, visit SECUnfiltered.com. This episode's brought to you by RHOBACK. Use promo code SECU for 20% off all joggers, polos, hoodies, shorts, much, much more. Look good, feel good this upcoming fall on game days at RHOBACK.com with the promo code SECU. 9 total teams from the SEC will have a number attached to their name when they play week 1. And real fast, I'm just going to throw this out there. If you don't like the preseason rankings, if you're not upset or if you are upset, take it like a grain of salt. It literally means nothing. It's like, whose line is it anyway? It's not like the points matter, and it's not like this is going to determine your status of moving into the college football playoff. You're fine. Go ahead and take a breath of fresh air. But with that being said, let's rank the 9 teams. Number 1, Georgia. Number 4, Texas. Number 5, Alabama. Number 6, Ole Miss. They round out the top 10. But right on the rear is Missouri at 11, LSU at 13, 15 is Tennessee, followed by 16 Oklahoma, and Texas A&M comes in at number 20. Real quickly, Auburn and Kentucky did get several votes, so they are on the precipice of being top 25 teams headed into 2024. Let's go ahead and break it down. Let's start off with Georgia. This is the best team in college football. You can argue with the tree if you want and see if they're going to respond, but going into the year, your argument, you're a Big Ten fan, I get it. You're not going to give credit to Georgia because of what you have in Columbus, Ohio. Maybe make that case if you're in Eugene, Oregon. But let's not kid ourselves. Georgia has arguably one of the best quarterbacks in the country in Carson Beck. It's year 2 in the system underneath Mike Bobo. On top of that, they added in some really good pieces. Not many teams are going to feel comfortable losing a Ladd McConkey and a Brock Bowers to the NFL and just smile and go, oh, we have Dominic Lovett, Oscar Delp, Dylan Bell, Colby Young, London Humphreys, and Ben Ysurek, 3 of which we just added this offseason. Not many teams get to lose a star receiver due to off-the-field incidents and go, it literally doesn't affect us whatsoever. They also get a running back by the name of Trevor Etienne. If you haven't heard of him, well, number 1, what rock were you living under? And let me make sure that you go back there. And number 2, this is probably the best running back we have seen come through Athens, Georgia, since the Todd Gurley, maybe Nick Chubb days. I would say he is an upgrade over what you saw with DeAndre Swift. But if you want to be nice, fine, DeAndre Swift. Defensively, they're sound on every level. You know what Glenn Schumann and Kirby Smart do behind closed doors. You know what this unit's going to look like. Even if KJ Bolden's got to play meaningful reps week 1, so be it. It's not going to be the end of the world. Texas at number 4. Let's talk about this. The loss of CJ Baxter is going to put a sour note on this squad. But they still have Jaden Blue. And Jaden Blue is a damn good running back. He is no slouch by any means whatsoever. He may not have been the favorite to be RB1, but there were many a fine folk out there who were going to bet that he goes over 1,000 this year. So don't think for 1 second he is not going to be able to carry the tote. Somebody else is going to have to pick up the pieces behind him. Is it Wisner? Is it somebody else? Is it a freshman? Whoever that is, so be it. You lose a ton of talent offensively, you bring in a ton of talent offensively. Most squads don't see an offseason where you add in a Silas Bolden, an Isaiah Bond, a Ryan Wingo. You also keep Jonte Cook, a Matthew Golden, and an Amari Nyblack. They don't see many offseasons where you don't lose almost anything on the offensive line. Oh, by the way, you feel pretty good that even though you are going to have to replace your right tackle and Christian Jones, the options there are pretty strong. And the same thing for the defense. Yes. One of the biggest blessings for Texas last year was having 2 bullies up front when it came to the run defense. Devondre Sweat and Byron Murphy were studs. Doesn't matter what conference they play in. They were just damn good, and they beat your ass to oblivion. But you did add in some really good replacements. Bill Norton is one of the most underappreciated defensive players in all of college football after what he did at Arizona last year. And the same thing goes for guys like Trey Moore on the outside and Anthony Hill at linebacker. This is a team that on paper, even with the departures of veteran talent and with the injury to CJ Baxter, still a top 4 team. In fact, in my opinion, the AP poll got the top 4 right, and they probably got it right in the exact order. Number 5, Alabama. This is where the luxury tax of the Crimson Tide comes in. I'm going to say something as an Alabama grad that's going to lose some fans here. I get it. I would switch you in Ole Miss going into the year. I would. I'm sorry. That's just it. My preseason top 5 would not feature Alabama. Still top 10. And probably because of what you did bring in this offseason, you're going to keep that number 5 ranking. And I'm not talking about the players. I'm talking about the coach. All he does is win. Kalen DeBoer does not know what the word lose is because if he's only lost 9 games during his entire college football head coaching tenure. He went into a program that was a desolate wasteland and immediately brought them to 11 victories and then a national championship appearance. He convinced players to stick around for the foreseeable future, and he also were able to get them to the first round of the NFL draft. Roma Dunse, thank you very much. How about Jalen McMillan, top 100 pick? How about a guy like Jalen Polk, top 100 pick? Yeah, I feel pretty good about that. Defensively, they were sound. He had the right coaches. He built relationships. And best of all, he's laughing in your face saying, oh, you don't think I can recruit? All right, let's go ahead and pull a 180. Reverse Uno, bitch. I got you. That's the way it feels right now when you're talking about a team like Alabama. They get the respect factor because of it is Titletown. It is Tuscaloosa. It is the Crimson Tide. That script A carries a lot of weight. Alabama fans have the right head coach at the right time. They have the offensive personnel. I would switch them with number 6. And speaking of number 6, Ole Miss to me is a top 5 team going into this year. I know that there's going to be a lot of people saying, you got to prove it. You got to prove it on the field. Guys, they put it in the transfer portal, and they return the same players that come back. If you're going to make the case that all these newcomers coming into Ohio State, all these newcomers coming into Oregon, all these newcomers coming into Georgia, make them that talented of a roster, then what's the excuse for Ole Miss? What is it? Because they didn't lose their starting quarterback. Ohio State did. You did at Oregon. They didn't lose their star wide receiver. You lost some at certain other schools. Texas did. Alabama did. You didn't lose your superstar tight end. Multiple teams lost that. You got better defensively. You got better in the trenches. The one thing that we heard from Lane Kiffin, you got to have solid trench play. And you know what? Now you do. Now you have a ton of it. And your schedule's manageable to where the only place to go is up. You got to win the big games. Plain and simple. You got to hold your own against LSU. You got to hold your own against Oklahoma. You got to hold your own against Georgia. You do that, you're in the college football playoff. We're nitpicking at this one, but I would still have them in my top 5 over an Alabama, who I would have at number 6. Number 11 is Missouri. Here's the good news if you're a Missouri fan. Just win. That's it. Because here's the reality, folks. Until you get to the first college football playoff poll, if you win in a 12-team dance, the only place to go is up. That's just it. You have arguably the best wide receiver in the country in Luther Burden. You have one of the most slept-on quarterbacks in the country, and Brady let him cook. You also have 2 really good running backs that don't get enough credit. Marcus Carroll was top 5 in rushing nationally last year at Georgia State. He'll be able to handle the SEC culture and the mentality. Same with Nate Noel. That's a thunder and lightning, and is going to create a hurricane of problems for defensive coordinators. They have a good number 2 wide receiver in Theo Wease. They got better on the offensive line. Defensively, you have some question marks. And no, well, you should. But the names you brought in, including Corey Batoon and several of the new coaches, they've been a part of championship programs. They have been to conference titles. Maybe not SEC titles, but they've still been there. You got to win the big ones. Because of now at 11, all you have to do is just keep pace. Beating in Alabama, beating in Oklahoma, beating in Texas A&M. You go do that, you'll be fine. Because you want to know, the start of the year, all is good and easy at Faurot Field. You got Murray State, you're boat racing them into oblivion. You get Boston College, you get Massachusetts, you get games that are supposed to be cakewalks, and you're fine. Because you are fine. Now let's go ahead and prove it. LSU at 13, I'm going to say something very controversial that a lot of people are going to argue with. They could be higher, and I wouldn't argue. They could. You want to know why? And here's the part that people seem to always piss me off when it comes to covering college football. And this is just God's honest truth, ladies and gentlemen. If you have an offensive line, you can win. That's just the case in point. I don't need to go into further detail. Yes, it's nice to have a number one wide receiver. Yes, it's nice to have a Heisman caliber quarterback. Yes, it's nice to be able to build your defensive secondary. If you have an offensive line that can keep your quarterback upright and healthy for 13 games, you will win games. You're the best player in college football. He should wear a patch that has number 7 on it because Will Campbell belongs in that conversation of not just best players at LSU, but best player in college football. If I'm starting a franchise tomorrow, that's the guy I'm going with. Plain and simple from a college football landscape. Emory Jones is a stud right tackle. You don't lose anyone besides your starting center. You'll make time with that. You bring in some really good pieces. Kyron Lacey finally gets to shine like every other LSU receiver. It's like wash, rinse, repeat, copy, paste, throw in future first-round pick because we've seen it every year down in the likes of Baton Rouge, Louisiana. And it may suck that you didn't land certain defensive players, but sometimes it's the project versus the projectors. Let me rephrase that actually. That came out very wrong, so let's go back to it. Sometimes it's about the teachers rather than the students. You have a great teacher, you'll be able to learn fast. They got great teachers down at Tiger Stadium. Blake Baker, Bo Davis, Redding. What you got in the secondary, you're good. You're in a really good spot if you are the likes of LSU. And I cannot wait to see what you do this year. You have the ambiance. You're outside the top 12. And by the way, have we not learned our lesson about LSU before where they just come and they find their way to 10 wins every single year? We're really going to do this again. All right. So be it, SEC fans. So be it, AP Polar voters. 15, Tennessee. I've heard so much about the Volunteers going into this year. So much about the Volunteers. No, I haven't. No, I haven't. I've heard a lot about Nico. Nico, he balled out in the bowl game. Nico, he balled out in practice. Nico, he's won over the locker room. Nico. And I don't mean to be rude to Nico Iamaleava. Yes, I said his name right. Tennessee is a top 15 program because Tennessee is built like a top 15 program. You have no idea what Nico Iamaleava is going to be. And I had many people come into my comment section, DM me on Twitter and go, how the hell do you have him ranked as a wait and see quarterback? I don't know, and neither do you, quarterback in your power ratings. Because I don't know, and neither do you. But you do know that they have the best defensive end in college football and James Pierce Jr. You do know that they have some really good transfers like Lance Hurd, Chris Brazzell, and Holden Stays. You know they have a good offensive line that's only gotten better with the addition of Hurd. You know they've had some really good wide receivers like Brew McCoy. You also have Squirrel White that is speeding through school zones. Maybe get Deontay Thornton to live up to expectations. Mike Matthews is the most underappreciated recruit in the country. You have them. You have a good run game. You have everything needed. And you have the head coach that handpicked the QB. So go ahead and argue with me that, oh, well, the linebacking core is unproven. Okay, it doesn't mean it's bad. Well, the running back room is unproven. Okay, well, it doesn't mean it's bad. They're a top 15 team. The way that they are built, they are a top 15 team. And some could argue that maybe they were even a top 12 team going into this year. 16 Oklahoma, maybe some people are going to say that's too high. In my opinion, it's a perfect spot. You want to know why, Sooner Nation? Because I've been on your side from the get-go. Even if you don't believe me, I have. I've been vouching for you, saying that you belong in the SEC well before all these other fine folks decided to hop on the bandwagon. Because you get to prove it. You get to prove that you were a top 16 team. But Cole, you don't always see the best rosters go 6-6 and they do that. Yeah, I do. You're right. I've seen that before. I've also seen Oklahoma be able to turn out offensive lineman after offensive lineman after offensive lineman into the NFL. I've also been able to see what Bill Beatonbow is made of when it comes to establishing a dominance. I've been able to see wide receivers hitch their stride down in Norman, Oklahoma. I've been able to see running backs boot, scoot, and boogie like Brexton Dunn their way into the end zone. I've been able to see a quarterback that was underappreciated, not well received because of one game. Let's make that clear. Because of one single game. And then he ends up leading his team all the way to a college football playoff appearance and a spot in New York City. Now, I'm not saying all that's going to happen for Jackson Arnold. I'm not saying all that's going to happen for this roster. I'm not saying that that's going to be the case for Brett Venables in year one. But you got a chance to prove it. You do. You have all these games against ranked opponents, and now this is going to only strengthen your case for a spot in the college football playoff. Potentially a top 10 Texas team, potentially a top 15 Tennessee team, potentially a ranked Auburn team, a top 10 Ole Miss squad. You got the pieces to be able to plant your flag right alongside Texas and go, hey, little brother syndrome that we talked about, yeah, that ain't happening for us at Norman, Oklahoma. Number 20, Texas A&M. That's a little high. I'm sorry, it is. Now, I gotta say that it's too high? No. You want to tell me right now that I'm getting the version of Texas A&M that should live up to the expectations? Absolutely no questions asked. 20 through 25 is a perfect location for them. I won't argue with you. But I'm also saying, as I've told you on multiple other videos, prove me wrong at number 20. I would have them personally at number 24. You just want my honest answer? They would still be a top 25 team. At best, they would be 24. They have the quarterback and they have the head coach. And if you have those two, you have about 50% of your problems solved. Having the offensive line is probably about 75% of your problems. Filling in the rest of the void is the other 25%. I don't know what their offensive line is going to be. That, to me, is the biggest X factor that will make them a 10-win roster or potentially a 6-6 squad. That's what it comes down to. Because they have the dudes. They do. Now it's just about having the right dudes in the right place at the right time. On top of that, I want to see what this wide receiver room can look like. Who breaks out? You don't have a safety blanket in Anaya Smith there anymore. But you do have a damn good tight end in Donovan Green. You do have some really good proven receivers in limited capacity like Noah Thomas and Moose Muhammad. You brought in some really good up-and-comers like Ernest Campbell and Isaiah Williams. Can one of you break out? Defensively, you have, in my opinion, the dark horse to win SEC Defensive Player of the Year and the Benardic Award in Nick Scorton. You have a really underappreciated linebacker in the world of college football in Torian York, and you get to see Bryce Anderson back at his natural safety spot. And you get, in my opinion, the anchor, as those of you that watch Deadpool and Wolverine, of College Station, back in the building. So now you're trending upward, because when you had Mike Elko there, things were promising. Can they stay promising? Real quickly before we get on out of here, Kentucky and Auburn getting votes. Would I have put them in my top 25? I would have considered it. I also would have considered Florida. And I know there's going to be people saying, how can you consider Florida? Because Florida is actually a good team. They got to prove it, and when they do, they will be ranked after week one's win against Miami. Spoiler alert, I just told you what's going to happen in Gainesville. It's going to happen because Graham Mertz is a damn good quarterback, and I'm tired of pretending he's not. But I also think that when you look at Kentucky and when you look at Auburn, they know that voters know it's time. You had a year to get your stuff together if you were on the Plains. You added in a damn good wide receiver. He's already proven that he is legit number one mentality. You also added in some really good proven guys like Keandre Lambert-Smith and Robert Lewis. You bring in Percy Lewis, the offensive tackle. He's not going to be on your blind side. You brought in some good defensive players. You have the right coach. Now it all comes down to, do you have the quarterback? Is number one the right guy? And death taxes every 3 years underneath Mark Stoops. Magic happens at Kroger Field. We are not shopping inside for an 8-win season. We are shopping and using coupons to get our way to 10-plus wins and a shot at the college football playoff. Dane Key, Barian Brown, Jamori Macklin might be the most slept-on wide receiver trio in the conference, and they definitely have a quarterback that can move and groove in the open field, and he's going to be in a system that works for him. There is a reality somewhere where Brock Vandagriff actually is the starting quarterback at Georgia this year, and Carson Beck is just trying to find his way to a new home. They could be that good. They have the big blue defensive line. They add in some really good pieces on the offensive line like Gerald Mincy. If they have stability, Mark Stoops does what Mark Stoops does, congratulations. We're talking about a team that once again will be playing in primetime moments for a shot at being college football's most underappreciated SEC team. But let me know in the comments section down below. Where was I right? Where was I wrong? Do you agree with my rankings? What do I need to change? What would you like to see changed? Make sure that also you're following us on social media, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, at SEC Unfiltered. Follow me at Mr. Cole Thompson. Scream to me that you agree with me or that you hate me and never want to see my face on the internet again. Make sure that also that you download the podcast version of the show, and to keep up with the number one source for all things SEC, visit SECUnfiltered.com. College football is right around the corner, and I'll be back tomorrow. Later, folks.